What is up guys, Dzeeff here, and today was a huge day for the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG. A few different content creators got to open some early 2021 Megatins, and we know a lot of the cards in the set now, which was really cool. The Megatins are always some of the most hyped products every single year, and this year was no exception. There are a lot of expensive cards in the metagame, and people were really excited to see which cards made the cut and which ones didn't. Some cards that I'm really excited about that I've seen so far have been Cross Sheep and Ice Dragon's Prison getting rarity upgrades, as well as Triple Tactics Talent getting a rarity downgrade, so hopefully it's a lot less expensive. We'll talk about a few of the other reveals later on in the video, but first, I want to focus on probably the biggest reveal, and that's that we now have Crossout Designator in the TCG. This card was released all the way back, and it's hard to believe, but in March of 2019, and we are finally just now getting it in our format. Crossout Designator is one of the most influential cards ever released in Yu-Gi-Oh! This card is very popular in the OCG, it has been ever since it was released, and now that we have it in the TCG, it's going to fundamentally change how we deck build. Let's take a look at what it does, just in case you guys don't know. So this is a quick play spell released in the 2021 Megatins. It is an ultra rare, which might mean it's less expensive than if it would have been a prismatic secret rare, but as we've seen with Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, just because it's an ultra rare doesn't mean it's going to be super easy to get. But I'm holding out hope that this card won't be that expensive. I hope that budget players are able to play this card, unlike with Dragoon, where that card is quite expensive. Anyway, Crossout Designator is a quick play spell that says, declare one card name, banish one of that declared card from your main deck, and if you do, negate its effects, as well as the activated effects and effects on the field of cards with the same original name until the end of this turn. You can only activate one Crossout Designator per turn. Obviously, that is a very powerful effect. The main thing you are using Crossout Designator against would be hand traps. A lot of people in the OCG play multiple copies of Crossout Designator plus a bunch of one-of hand traps to try and stop whatever hand trap their opponent throws at them on turn 1. Notably, Crossout Designator works against cards like NIBIRU and Infinite Impermanence that Called by the Grave can't really interact with. That is a huge deal. In the past, cards like NIBIRU and Impermanence have been so appealing because they don't lose to Called by the Grave. Nowadays, we do have Triple Tactics Talent, which NIBIRU isn't that good against, but Impermanence has always been at the very top of hand traps, partly because it is an actual trap card, not a monster effect. But now that we have Crossout Designator, those cards do get worse. Where Crossout Designator gets very interesting though is that it really does change how we think about hand traps. Maybe once Crossout Designator is released, it's not about finding the best hand traps necessarily, it might be about finding the best hand traps that are also not as popular as the other ones in the format. When you play a hand trap that your opponent might have in their deck, it gets a lot worse if your opponent is playing Crossout Designator. So maybe the hand traps we don't see as often get a little bit better. In general though, even if that doesn't happen, Crossout Designator is a huge deal for pretty much any combo deck out there. In Yu-Gi-Oh's past, many combo decks have tried not playing hand traps in different formats. They figure they're so powerful going first that you don't want to dilute the deck by putting in a bunch of hand traps, but with Crossout Designator, combo players will be encouraged to play multiple copies of Crossout Designator with a couple one-of hand traps just in case their opponent has them on turn 1. This card makes me think that maybe hand traps won't necessarily always be the best choice against combo decks going forward. Maybe it's better to just play going second cards that can break boards as opposed to hand traps which can get hit by Crossout Designator. I'm not saying that hand traps are suddenly going to disappear from the metagame. I'm sure they're still going to be very popular, but that is a deck building decision that might change down the road. Overall, Crossout Designator has already proven itself time and time again in the OCG, and I expect it to be very powerful in the TCG as well. Keep in mind here that Crossout Designator isn't only used for hand traps. It's very good in mirror matches, for example. You can go first and have Crossout Designator to perhaps stop your opponent's entire turn 1 play. This card is extremely versatile. It's already been played in a ton of decks in the OCG, not only combo decks, but sometimes control decks as well. It is kind of like a Called by the Grave, but for any card, as long as you're playing that card in your deck. So deck building will get very interesting once this card is released in a few weeks, and honestly, as long as this card is in the game, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is going to be very different. Crossout Designator already had a ton of hype behind it, so we're about to see how good it is in practice, but if the OCG is anything to go off of, Crossout Designator is probably going to be in the metagame for quite a while. As for the other reveals in the opening, we had those new World Premiere cards, the Blue Eyes and Dark Magician support cards. I've talked about them in the past. They kind of got leaked a little bit early from that OCG World Premiere pack, but then also Konami confirmed them in a YouTube video, so we knew they were going to be in here, but now we see them actually pulled, which is pretty cool. They're all ultra rares, I think. You also have a lot of nice rarity upgrades for decks like Tri-Brigades and Shaddolls and Virtual Worlds, and some one-ofs like I mentioned earlier, like Ice Dragon's Prison and Crossed Sheep, two of my favorite cards from the past year. Overall, I think these tins are going to be a hit. There are some misses here though. We haven't seen Access Code Talker, we haven't seen Lightning Storm, we haven't seen Droplet. All of those, as far as I know, have not been pulled yet. I know that Lightning Storm just got a reprint, but Pot of Extravagance was reprinted in Toon Chaos and then in the Megatins. And I know that Forbidden Droplet is going to be in Battles of Legend, but last year we had a few cards that were in the Megatin and then in the Maximum Gold set that was released a few months later. So I think that it wasn't that crazy to assume that those cards would still be in here. Access Code Talker is probably the biggest miss. That was a card I was very excited about, and apparently it's not in here. I would hope if it's not in this set that it would be in the Battles of Legend or perhaps the Gold series that's coming out in a few months. Overall though, this was a very exciting reveal day. I think the Megatins are always a great product, and this year looks to be no exception. Crossout Designator is a huge reveal. I'm not sure why Konami didn't promote it in their summary for the set. It seems like people were really looking forward to this card, so I'm a little bit surprised that Konami never mentioned it once. But here it is, and people have mixed thoughts. Some people don't want to play against it, some people are really excited to play it in their decks, but regardless of if you like or hate the card, one thing does remain the same. Crossout Designator is going to change Yu-Gi-Oh! A lot going forward. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.